Welcome to Cornerstone Home Inspector Education Center. Tonight is the last of our three-part series, the New Jersey Home Inspection Standards. We've completed it's a 4-hour credit requirement. We completed a 1-hour ethics, a 90-minute standards and practice overview, and tonight we will be going over part 3, the final part, 90 minutes, applying the standards in the field. Building on the regulations covered in part 2, this 90-minute course teaches New Jersey home inspectors how to apply the standards of practice during actual inspections, reducing liability, improving report writing, and recognizing the situations that generate complaints. Oops. Course objective, what this course teaches. This course bridges the gap between knowing the standards and applying them confidently in the field. Every module is built around real inspection scenarios that practicing New Jersey home inspectors encounter every week. By the end of this webinar, you will apply the New Jersey standard of practice to non-standard field conditions, write defensible factual inspection reports, recognize defects most likely to generate claims, communicate limitations clearly to clients, avoid the top 10 mistakes New Jersey home inspectors made. Module 1, review of key standards. A focused 10-minute recap of what the New Jersey standard of practice requires, so every inspector starts this course from the same foundation. Now, we went over some of this stuff last night, but again, this is just sort of just a very brief review. Why the standards exist, the core purpose. New Jersey standards of practice establish a uniform minimum baseline for what every licensed home inspector must observe, evaluate, and report. They exist to protect consumers, define professional responsibility, and critically to protect inspectors from unrealistic liability. Understanding why the standards were written helps inspectors apply them with confidence rather than treating them as a checklist to be completed mechanically. What the standards define: a scope of a home inspection, systems and components required to be inspected, items explicitly excluded from inspection, required actions, observe, operate, and report. The inspector's duty to recommend further evaluation. Scope of a home inspection. What's included? Well, it's readily accessible visual observable systems and components present at the time of the inspection, including structure, roofing, electrical, plumbing, HVAC, and more. What is excluded? Items concealed behind walls, under insulation, or inaccessible at the time of inspection. Inspectors are not required to move belongings, perform destructive testing, or access unsafe areas. The inspector's role is to have a professional opinion based on visual observation, not a warranty, co-compliance review, or engineering report. The standards define a floor, not a ceiling. Inspectors may exceed minimum requirements, but the standards define the legal baseline. Client expectations versus standard of practice. So, what do clients expect that inspectors are not required to do? Clients often expect walking on all roofs, testing appliances beyond their scope, code violation identification, pest or mold inspections, cost estimates for repair. Standards actually require visual observation where accessible, operate readily accessible systems, report material defects observed, recommend further evaluation when warranted, and document limitations encountered. Tonight, we're going to have a little bit of talking back and forth between Stan and I. Stan, you there?
Yes, I am.
And so, do you come across clients often having to expect, when you're at an inspection and the client shows up, are they say, do you walk the roof? Did you go on the roof? Have you had that a lot? Or
Yeah, I'm going to say no, not anymore, because one of the things I realized, I've been doing this a long time, almost 4 decades, and I learned early on that what we do, what we have to do, what we are governed to do by the standards of practice or the expectations of the state are usually different than the clients.
right?
So I spend a lot of time trying to set their expectations before we even get to the house.
Okay.
Right? But it is by using the limitations and exclusions of the standards, the clauses in my agreement, the caveats that I use during an inspection, all the stuff that even Connecticut state standards require, to be able to set those expectations.
Gotcha. And you
Jim,
can still,
I don't see the presentation.
okay, hold on, let me share this, hold on. So I had to move it because I wanted to see you. Whoops, that's not it.
So
Hold
I
on.
will say that when I was new,
Yep,
or when the Connecticut standards first came into being, I thought that they were kind of flimsy, at least from a point of view of what we had to report on, describe. But it took me a little while to see the full purpose and value of the regulations and the standards. And
gotcha,
I think that would be beneficial if everybody could really read into those things as a benefit
gotcha.
and helping.
Can you can see the PowerPoint now?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Module tool 2, the standard versus real life. Homes don't always fit neatly into standards. This module covers the field conditions that require judgment, documentation, and sometimes the courage to limit an inspection. When field conditions create limitations, the standards assume a reasonable, accessible home. In practice, inspectors encounter conditions every week that restrict observation. The key question is, how do I document this properly and protect myself? Snow-covered roofs cannot evaluate roofing material, flashing, or slope. Document clearly and recommend reinspection after snow melts. Locked rooms, areas not accessible at the time of inspection must be noted. Recommend access be provided before closing. Utilities not active, no water, gas, electricity means systems cannot be operated. Document and recommend reinspection with utilities on. Stored items blocking access, furniture, storage, or personal property, blocking panels, crawl spaces, or attic hatches must be noted as limitation of inspection. So one of the things that I do here, like New Jersey, New England, whatever, is if I'm booked out, and I'm usually booked out anywhere from 7 to 10 days, very rarely beyond that, I'll look at the weather. And if I know I have an inspection on Friday and they're going to have snow Thursday night, I'll go Thursday morning or Wednesday and do the roofs. If there's no snow, I'll sort of try to, make the extra effort to do that. But I've been in plenty of situations where I'm booked after a major storm and you just can't see the roof. Locked rooms, they're usually locked for a reason because people don't want you in them. Utilities not active. I have disclaimers at the beginning of my report in every kind of section. Today I did an inspection, the water was off. I can't run anything with water. Stored items blocking access. Technically we don't have to move anything and you shouldn't, but every once in a while you got to get to an electrical panel, and if it's debris that I know I can't break, I'll move it. But if it's, their china in the way, I'm not gonna go in there. I'm not gonna start moving stuff that is gonna cause me headaches. But I know everything in the report.
Jim, I'd like to jump back to the snow-covered roofs
Sure,
for
go
us.
ahead. Yeah,
In the past, I've heard home inspectors make arrangements to go back when the snow is gone. Now, if it's a sprinkle, sometimes you can even see the outlines of the shingles through the snow.
sure.
That snow is not going to last very long. But I remember, unfortunately, when you get older, sometimes you think it was 5 years ago, it was like 15, but there was one winter where we had snow every other weekend, and it was very cold, so nothing was melting. These sales move on. The
Yeah,
sales move on. It's up to the realtor to figure out how we're going to handle a roof we can't see. Are you going to build something into the contract that gives them the opportunity to look at it when the snow is gone? But I would never commit to anybody. I don't care if it was good intentions or not, to tell them, yeah, I'll come back and look at the roof when the snow is gone, because who knows when that's going to happen.
right.
So it's final. When I leave that inspection,
That's
I
it.
didn't see a roof, and I'm not going to.
Agreed. Partially finished basements, a common challenge. Partially finished basements present a documentation dilemma. Finished sections conceal framing, insulation, plumbing, and electrical behind drywall. Unfinished sections remain visible and inspectable. Is that a word? Best practice. Clearly describe which areas were accessible and which were not. Report on what was observed in the accessible areas. Note what was concealed and could not be evaluated. Recommend evaluation of concealed systems if concerns are present. Never suggest the entire basement is uninspected. Describe specifically what was and what was not observable. And again, this is correct. This happens all the time. And one of the things in my reports that I put in is the percentage of basement finished. And that can be difficult because not coming up with the percentage, but one section, it may all have sheetrock, but one section doesn't have carpet. Or, I usually go by, it's got to have fully finished and you got to have some kind of heat source. So just document. Unsafe access conditions, unsafe routes, steep pitch, deteriorating materials, wet or icy surfaces, or visible structures concerns may prevent safe walking. Inspectors are not required to walk unsafe routes. Document the limitation and inspect from ladder or ground level. Unsafe crawl spaces, standing water, very low clearance, suspected hazard materials, or structural instability create conditions where entry is not required. Document the condition, photograph the access point, and recommend further evaluation. So the unsafe roofs are pretty simple. When you think about yourself as an inspector, especially in New England, when you're actually going up on a roof, in the winter, you're not going up. When it's raining, it's not going up. If the pitch is too great on a cape, you're not going up. So pick your roofs, be careful what you're going up on. But if you do, and I know in Connecticut and in New Jersey, if you do not want to go on a roof, if you feel it's unsafe, you do not have to go on a roof. Unsafe crawl spaces, they have a lot of this new technology with robots and these little cars that drive in with cameras. Those can be good. A lot of the crawl spaces are encapsulated with insulation. You have to be careful in there because you don't want to damage the insulation, and you have to document that you can't see any of the framing or structure at all.
You know what, Jim? I think a lot of inspectors are afraid that they're doing an inferior job if they don't do certain things.
Right.
And I think that you need to put that out of your mind. Somebody paid $10,000 to have a crawl space encapsulated. The last thing they want is the home inspector to go in there and rip a seam, and why? Because you're not going to see anything, even if you do go in. I know with roofing, when I was younger, I got on wet roofs. I got on roofs with moss and debris. And then when I started almost falling off them, I changed my whole attitude.
Right.
You slip, you slide, you don't know if you're going to stop. Even a pitch. One day I got up on a roof that I thought I could walk, and I got all the way up to the top, and the ladder looked so small. I didn't know how to get back down because the pitch just looked different from the top. Well, I finally got down, and I said, I'm not doing that anymore. And I didn't really need to be honest with you. So you don't let the fact that you think you're going to be not do your job right force you to do something that in your mind you shouldn't be doing.
Correct.
And your standards say that. Your state standards and regulations support you for that.
Can inspectors disclaim these conditions? Yes, but only if documented correctly. A disclaimer without documentation is a liability. A properly documented limitation protects the inspector and gives the client actionable information. The three-part documentation rule: state the limitation, describe exactly what condition prevented full inspection, photograph it. A photo in the report validates the claim, recommend next steps, advise, reinspect, further evaluation, or a specialist. A sample would be the electrical panel is not accessible at the time of inspection due to stored items blocking the enclosure. Access and evaluation by a licensed electrician is recommended prior to closing. Yeah, this is pretty simple here. You've got to document. The photos are, in the last 15, 20 years have come a long way. I know I write from an iPad, so those photos are pretty good. and we're going to go further into this, but I've been photographing when I do my kitchen sink. I photograph when the water's on. I photograph the range when all the burners are on. So there's no question that those things were running and functional at the time of the inspection. So when should an inspection be limited? Safety risk to the inspector. No inspection is worth an injury. If a condition poses a credible physical risk, steep wet roof, unstable floor, confined hazardous space, the inspector may decline to enter and must document why. Physical obstruction, stored items, furnishings, or finishes that prevent observation must be noted. The inspector is not required to move personal property or perform destructive testing. Utilities not on. Without active utilities, mechanical, electrical, and plumbing systems cannot be operated. This is a significant limitation that must be clearly communicated to the client before and within the report. So safety risk to inspectors, the short story, I know we have plenty of time. I was training an intern and I said, this is a pretty big house. We're going to do it together. It's a multifamily. I'm going to do the kitchens. You're going to do the bathrooms. And I train people well. And I said to him, if there's an area that you don't want to go into, don't go into it. Come to me first, and I will work with you to see what's appropriate and what's not appropriate. So we go into this apartment. He comes back. He's ghost white. And I said, what's wrong? He says, I can't go into that bathroom. It's too disgusting. And I said, well, how disgusting could it be? And I opened up the door, and it was, level 5 contamination. Like, there's no way anybody's going to that bathroom. So I said, what you do is correct. You snap a picture and you say, due to biological hazards, we're not going into this bathroom.
Also, Jim, with the utilities, most people are going to ask, especially if they know the house is vacant, are the utilities on? All right.
Right.
And what I found in the past, and according to the Jersey standards, you're supposed to record that. And the realtor will say yes, or it will be at the time of inspection just to get you there.
Yeah.
And then you get there and they're not on.
Right.
And then they figure you're going to continue, and you will. You're not going to be able to do the mechanicals.
Right.
Which could be, a difficulty with no lights in a vacant house. So even though somebody says yes, they're going to be on, just be prepared.
And to your point, you guys, is sometimes, and it's just how you want to do it. When I go back for the radon, because if I'm not doing any electrical or any plumbing, sometimes when I return, I'll do it if it's on. And if you want to charge more for that, fine. But to me, it's not that you're not going to be able to do the inspection if it's not on when you're there. So I don't have a problem going back and looking at it. That's just me personally. I'm going back anyway. So.
Okay. Report writing and liability. The inspection report is the inspector's primary legal document. Vague, speculative, or poorly worded reports are the leading cause of complaints and claims against New Jersey home inspectors. The foundation of defensible report writing. Objective writing. Report what you observe, not what you believe, guess, or fear. Stick to physical evidence visible at the time of the inspection. Factual observations. Use observable, verifiable language. Deteriorating flashing was observed with chimney base is factual. The chimney will leak is not. Avoid speculation. Words like I think, possibly, might be, and could be create liability. Inspectors are not required to predict future failures. Clear recommendation. Every defect should conclude with a recommendation: monitor, maintain, evaluate, repair, or replace. Vague closings leave clients and courts guessing. Viewing code. If you're viewing this as a pre-recorded event, your viewing code is NJLAW 727, New Jersey Law 727. When to recommend evaluation versus replacement. Recommend evaluation when you observe a symptom but cannot determine the root cause. A specialist assessment is needed: electrician, structural engineer, roofer. The system is operating but shows signs of age or wear. You are uncertain of the extent of the defect. Recommend replacement when the component is at or beyond its typical service life. The defect is clearly beyond repair. Failed waterproofing, rotten framing. Safety is a concern, and the defect is unambiguous. The component is no longer meeting minimal functional requirements. When in doubt, recommend evaluation. It is always defensible. Recommend replacement without evidence can overstate your findings and expose you to pushback. So this is something that you're going to run into when you're inspecting. And your client, especially in this market, says, I'm overpaying for a house and that heating system's 30 years old. And you look at the heating system, you just maybe see a little rust in the corners, the tubes may be a little dirty, there's a little soot here and there, but the system's functioning, the house is heating up. Do you recommend replacement? I wouldn't. Even though it says here the component is at or beyond its typical service life, I do put the service life in there. I say that it's either at or beyond its service life, and I strongly recommend evaluation, file license, whatever, heating, electrician, whatever it is. At that point, I might put in the report, you may consider replacement due to the age and functionality of the unit. Poor versus better narrative writing. The single most powerful improvement in any inspector can make is upgrading narrative language. Compare these examples. A poor narrative. I think the roof may leak. Why it fails, speculative, personal, no observation, no recommendation, no qualifier. Better narrative. Evidence of deteriorating shingles was observed at the rear slope. Active leakage could not be confirmed during the inspection. Evaluation and repairs by a qualified roofing contractor are recommended. Why this works is because it's factual observation, honest limitation, and clear recommendation. I don't know how you guys feel, but I see a lot of these reports from time to time where everything is just acceptable. And sometimes there's a picture, sometimes there's not. How is the roof? Walked on, acceptable. I don't think that gives a very good idea of a home inspection. What do you guys think?
Or serviceable, Jim, is another one that drives me
Right.
crazy. Now, to your point, I try to put in the wording that is in our standards, to repair, further evaluation. I try to use what's in there. And even going back to what you were saying before, I may recommend, and I think Stan does as well, is recommend budgeting for future replacement, however you want to word it. But yes, those words, a lot of these generated reports, when I started, there was none of that. It was all, we had a handwritten report we gave out, we typed it up. And a lot of these new reports that have come out all over the place use those terminology. And I think they're very vague. What is serviceable? You guys can come into service. Is it good, fair, functioning, not functioning, significant, efficient?
I don't use any of that either.
Yeah, no, it's too vague. What does somebody mean by serviceable? People go, okay,
right.
Jim, exactly. I think if you've been doing this long enough, you can look at a roof, and even if you don't know how old it is, like for instance, I had a roof just the other day. I could tell that a layer was taken off because there are empty nail holes in the sheathing. And this roof they claim was 11 years old. When I looked at the age of the house, the condition of the shingles, I kind of believe that within a year or two, there was nothing else wrong with it. So, I was fine with that roof. And then 2 days later, same person she was buying two houses. As soon as I put the ladder up at the eaves, I didn't even need to go anymore. I did get on it, but there was granular loss in the gutters. There was exposed fiberglass. There were nails popping through the shingles. That's all I needed to see. And I told her this roof needs to be replaced. I'm not telling her to have a roofer come out and say that. I told her, you got to replace this roof. It's going to get worse and worse as it ages.
Right.
And
that's just me.
Have a roofer come out, stand for an estimate, obtain an estimate prior to purchase for replacement.
Yeah.
Put that in there all the time.
A lot of roofing on that house. Because it had a couple of additions. It was like endless.
I was always taught when I got into this business, sometimes you have to make the call.
Who told you that?
And we look at a lot of stuff, and there are times where you can clearly say that this needs to be replaced.
Exactly.
And it doesn't matter whether it's a furnace, a hot water. I mean, a hot water heater is rusted and leaking. You need a hot water heater.
Right.
I mean, that's kind of a no-brainer. You don't need to have it further evaluated by a plumber. You can, to get an estimate, ballpark, have somebody come in, and most of the time it's usually after they close. Nowadays, right? They may get a credit or something, and they have a person come in, but at least you're letting them know.
Are you guys
So
to
go ahead.
insurance companies not giving insurance to the house if the roofs are 10 years or older?
Oh my God, that's getting bad.
You can have moss and lichen, Angelo. You can have moss and lichen on the roof, and if they do a satellite Google, they're
Right.
calling it out. And maybe it's not. I've had roofs that are 25, 20 years that are not that bad. I mean, and they're just, the insurance companies it's a big problem. Older roofs, moss, lichen, algae. They're
Yeah,
not
I
insuring.
don't estimate roof life anymore. I don't put anything or try to find out the age of the roof. I just put unknown.
Yeah.
I put, if I'm pretty. It's just after you look at enough roofs, I may just do a plus or minus, or according to owner, they said the roof is 10 to 15 years, although it appears older based on granular loss, lifting, nails popping, missing tabs.
Right.
It's just the way I've always done it, and I've actually, I've never had a problem that way. But if you don't feel comfortable, but listen, if it was built in the 90s. You could probably, or early 2000, chances are that if it's not the original roof, it's probably the second roof. So you can kind of get an idea, but it's ballpark. And
Yeah,
So,
they called me back and like they told me that the roof is 15 years old and they won't give me insurance. I'm like, well,
all right.
you're gonna have to find an insurance company. It's just a guesstimate. There's nothing stamped on it.
We got roofers now running around, cold calling people, ringing on their doorbells because they see a couple lifting shingles and they're trying to sell it as storm damage. They did it to my brother-in-law. He got him half the cost of a roof job because even though the roof was, every time I went over the house, I'm going, you need a roof. And I think I prompted him to get a roofer, but they called it storm damage, not old roof. And he got like $5,000 for it. So there's a lot going on. You just got to stick to your guns when you're doing the home inspection. You can't worry about what the insurance company is going to say.
Right.
You can't. Right. You just do your thing.
Yeah.
So narrative examples: moisture and water intrusion. We want to avoid there is a water problem in the basement. We want to use evidence of prior moisture intrusion. Prior moisture intrusion was observed along the north foundation wall, including efflorescence and staining consistent with periodic water infiltration. Active moisture was not present at the time of inspection. Evaluation by your waterproofing contractor is recommended. Avoid the basement gets wet sometimes. Use this. Staining on the floor slab and lower block courses indicates prior water intrusion. The source could not be determined during this inspection. A waterproofing specialist should evaluate the foundation, perimeter, and drainage condition. So I like these more narratives. It does make the report a lot longer, but it does help you if a problem arises with the client.
And just to tie this into the New Jersey standards, they want you to be descriptive because it benefits everybody involved.
Mm-hmm.
It minimizes your liability. It gets the point across. If they read that and they still don't get it, that's on them.
Narrative examples: roofing and electrical. We want to avoid the roof looks bad and should probably be replaced soon. We want to use asphalt shingles exhibit granular loss, hurling, and surface cracking consistent with advanced wear. Estimated remaining life surface is limited. Evaluation by a qualified roofing contractor is recommended to assess remaining life and identify any areas of active deterioration. Electrical. We want to avoid there's a double tap in the panel. This is a fire hazard. Electrical, use this. Double tapped conductors were observed at the main panel on circuit breakers not rated for multiple conductors. This condition may affect circuit protection reliability. Evaluation and correction by a licensed electrician are recommended. So again, these are just different sort of examples on what to use and what not to use. Wording that creates liability, speculative language. This will fail. This is going to leak. Inspectors cannot predict the future. Use may only when paired with observable evidence. Code violation claims. Stating a condition violates code implies you have code enforcement authority. Use does not appear to meet current safety standards instead. Overconfident assessments. Estimating exact remaining service life in years, guaranteeing function, or stating a system is in excellent condition without qualification. So I get this all the time about the codes, especially from new homeowners, new buyers. And they're, I'll say, oh, there's no GFCIs in the kitchen and the basement and the garage. Well, the seller's going to have to correct that because that's code now. And what I do now is I tell them that the oldest house I ever did was from 1680, and the ceilings were like 5'8". Tall. It was like you needed to duck through all the house. And I said, those ceilings don't meet code today, but no one's changing them. At least in Connecticut, you do not have to bring residential construction up to code. You do for commercial when you sell a commercial building, but on a residential home, it got a CO when they built it, and that's good enough. Now, what I do tell people is on significant safety issues or other upgrades that you'd like to make, these are the things that I would recommend. And this is what's going on in construction today. Okay. Report writing. Here's a discussion exercises. Review these 4 narratives, which are defensible. The HVAC system is old and should be replaced. B, the heating system operated at the time of inspection. The approximate age is 18 to 20 years, which is nearer the typical lifespan, or at the near typical lifespan. Evaluation by an HVAC contractor is recommended. C, there might be a gas leak in the furnace room. We smell something. D, a sulfur-like odor was detected near the gas furnace during the inspection. Gas leaking testing was beyond the scope of this inspection. Evaluation by a gas utility or a licensed HVAC contractor is strongly recommended prior to occupancy. A and C create the liability. B and D are defensible. Why? Because they report on observable facts, acknowledge limitations honestly, and close with a clear recommendation. Module 4, common defects that generate claims. These are conditions inspectors most frequently miss, and the ones most likely to result in a complaint, arbitration, or lawsuit after closing. Roof flashing and drainage. Flashing is the #1 missed defect. Improper or deteriorating flashing is the leading cause of post-inspection moisture complaints. It's often overlooked because it requires close physical inspection and is easily missed from ground level. What to look for: step and counter flashing at chimneys and dormers, valley flashing condition and overlap, kick-out flashing at roof-to-wall transitions, pipe boot seals around penetrations, caulk-only repairs masking missing metal flashing. So Cornerstone just had a flashing webinar, and you can see that on our site. Foundation movement and moisture intrusion. Foundation movement. Horizontal cracks in block walls indicate lateral soil pressure and are a structural concern requiring engineer evaluation. Diagonal stair step cracks in mortar joints indicate differential settlement. Vertical cracks may be cosmetic or structural. Context matters. Never guess. Recommend a structural engineer. Moisture intrusion. Efflorescence, staining, peeling paint, and high humidity readings are observable evidence of prior or active moisture. Document each sign separately, photograph from a close range, and recommend a waterproofing contractor. Never say dry basement unless conditions confirm it fully. Grading and drainage, commonly overlooked. Improper grading is one of the most frequently underreported defects in New Jersey home inspections. Soil that slopes towards the foundation channels water directly against the building, yet it often dismissed as a minor maintenance item. What do we want to report? Negative grading within 6 feet of the foundation, low spots adjacent to the building, and downspouts discharge directly towards the structure. Recommend regrading and proper drainage correction. Why this matters is poor grading is primary contributing factor to basement moisture intrusion. Inspectors who don't report it become the first name in the complaint. So one of the things you have to be careful of is it's a dry day and you're walking around the house and the grading looks okay. I have like probably 4 or 5 different comments that I use when they're raining, when it's not raining, when it has rained, when it hasn't rained for a long time. So in all my comments, unless I see the pitch directly towards the foundation, if it's not been raining, I tell people that inspection was limited because it's not raining. It appears that the drainage, that the grading is appropriate for the building, but that they should monitor that during the period of first rain and make corrections as needed. So it's something we should think about. Electrical double taps and GFI protection. Double tap breakers. A double tap occurs when 2 conductors are connected to a single circuit breaker not rated for that configuration. This affects current protection reliability and is commonly cited defect in post-inspection complaints. Identify the panel manufacturer. Some breakers are rated for 2 conductors. I know the newer Siemens are. Document with photographs showing the condition clearly. Recommend evaluation and correction by a licensed electrician. Missing GFCI protection. GFCI protection is required in bathrooms, kitchens, garages, exteriors, crawl spaces, near pools. Missing or non-functioning GFCI devices are a safety concern that must be reported, not minimized as a maintenance item. Test every single GFCI outlet with a detector. Note locations where protection is absent. Recommend installation by a licensed electrician. Someone wanted to break in and say something?
Well, I think right now, because of the 2023 changes, people are used to seeing them or know that they should be, say, outside and in the garage and at the kitchen counter, near the sink. Most people are still the 6 foot from the sink, right?
Yep.
You know, all outlets now on the counter, and the bathroom. So I have a narrative that I put that talks about all the new locations as well, that it's not mandatory right now. The GFI police are not going to come, but you should consider putting them in because it'll make your electrical system safer.
Okay.
Because there was a big change, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And to add to the go back one sec, Jim, just to add, some manufacturers, you can put 2 wires in there, but it's all, you got to look at it. If you go on a panel, and we'll just use square D, because square D, it looks like a little M. You could shove 2 wires under there. Maybe they put the doorbell transformer. Maybe they don't. Maybe 1 or 2 is okay. But if you start to see multiple double taps, even with a breaker that accepts it, that panel amperage may be undersized, 100 amps. I mean, if you got 100 amps and everybody just continues to put 2 wires in there. But if you see, again, even with tandem breakers, some panel, new construction, no, but older houses, they'll put a couple tandem, twin breakers in there. But you see 4, 5, 6 twin breakers, that's something you want to point out, that you may have to upgrade, have an electrician come in and evaluate to, consider upgrading the service. It's as time goes on, people add. And
Good point.
Again, you may not know until you plug in every air conditioner, window air conditioner, your computer, and all this other stuff, and you start popping breakers. We may not see that, but it's just something to make note of. And as long as the electrician says it's okay, it's okay. But they're talking about single lug screws where there's 2 wires under there. They can loosen up, arc, and that could be a fire hazard. So those are something I definitely point out. But it's just something to make note of when you're looking at the panel.
AFCI protection, a growing source of complaints. What is AFCI protection and why does it matter? Arc fault circuit interrupters protection has been required by the NEC for bedroom circuits since 1999 and has expanded significantly in subsequent code additions. Many New Jersey homes, particularly those built or renovated in the 2000s, were required to have AFCI protection, but may not have received it properly. What to observe? Check the panel for AFCI breakers. Note the year of construction or major renovation to assess the likely code requirement at the time of permit. What to report? Do not state definitively that AFCI protection is required. Report what was observed and recommend evaluation by a licensed electrician if protection appears absent. Why inspectors miss it? AFCI breakers look similar to standard breakers. Without close examination of the panel labeling, They're easy to overlook. Honestly, I don't look for AFCI breakers. If they're there, great. If they're not, you're probably going to get a complaint from your client that their breakers are tripping when they plug their iPhones in. So probably better that they're not there. Unsafe decks, a high liability item. Deck failures cause serious injuries and generate among the highest value claims against home inspectors. New Jersey inspectors must evaluate decks carefully and document conditions thoroughly. Ledger board connection, improper attachment to the house structure is the leading cause of deck collapse. Look for thorough bolts, proper flashing, and signs of rot at the connection point. Post footings and support, also lag bolts. Post bearings on soil or improperly sized footings indicate potential instability. Note post-based hardware conditions and evidence of wood deterioration at grade. Guardrail and baluster integrity. Test guardrails for stability. No opening sizes exceeding 4 inches and guardrail heights below current standards. These are reportable safety concerns. So decks can be difficult. This is very basic on what to look for. We do have a deck webinar, I believe we did one. So you can look for that. But there's a lot that goes into deck construction. The lag bolts, the flashing, footing height, clear support, bridging, cross bridging, the height of the deck. Does it require railings? So there's a lot you have to look at. And I've not come across many decks that there's not something going on with. So same thing with like chimneys. There's always something going on with them. Water heaters, age, condition, and safety. What to evaluate? Age, identify from the serial number using manufacturing dating codes. TPR valve, is it present? Properly piped within 6 inches of the floor. I think that's supposed to be 2 inches. Seismic strapping, required in New Jersey for water heaters. Flue condition, proper draft, no backdrafting, no visible deterioration, signs of leakage or corrosion at connections. How to report it. Report the approximate age, observed condition, and functional status. Recommend evaluation or budgeting for replacement when the unit is near or beyond its 8 to 12-year typical life cycle. I can tell you this is the number one call I used to get for water heaters when I first started, because it's something that's just going to fail. And, if they're 15, 20 years old, you're most likely still going to be inspecting when it fails. I put in my reports an extensive limitation of inspection of the water heaters, of the age. I'm really tough on water heaters because I just got tired of the calls. So I'm very specific to take pictures of the entire water heater, of the TPR valve, of the top of the water heater, if there's any corrosion, of the base of the water heater, and the plate with all the serial numbers and everything. So this way, everybody's on the same page of how old it is, how long it should last, and do not call me when it breaks. HVAC age versus condition. One of the most misreported items in a home inspection. Age alone does not determine condition. The condition alone does not determine the remaining service life. Both must be reported. Report the age. Identify manufacturer date from the data plate or serial number. Note whether the unit is within, at, or beyond typical service life, 15 to 20 years for furnaces, 10 to 15 years for central AC. Report the condition. Did the system operate? Were there unusual sounds, odors, delayed ignition, or visible deterioration? A 25-year-old furnace that still operates is still worth a recommendation for evaluation and budgeting. Recommend appropriately. For older but functioning systems, the system operated at the time of the inspection at its approximate age, budgeting for replacement is recommended. Evaluation by an HVAC contractor is advised. So one of the things, because if you're in Connecticut, if you're fully licensed, you're considered a supervisor. You can train other people. And I do take on interns from time to time. And the interns, the newer, younger guys, are all into their apps and all into finding out how old it is from, taking pictures and the data plates. And I try to discourage them at the beginning from using all that information. I want them to learn to look at these systems and try to determine the age of condition without that information in the beginning. And don't get me wrong, that information is critical. And if it's there, it's good to have. And I put it in the report myself. But I know when I started, that's how I was trained, is stay away from the data plates at the beginning of the inspection of the item. So this way you become more comfortable when those data plates are not there. And you run into a lot of those inspections on those systems where they're either have been removed or they're damaged or the system's old enough where it doesn't have one anymore. So it's good to get used to inspecting things just visually and then using your data plates and all that as backup. Active plumbing leaks. Don't miss them. Where to look? Under every sink, run the water and observe supply and drain connections. At the base of toilets, look for staining and soft flooring. Around water heaters, connections and TPR discharge. At exposed supply piping in basements and utility areas. Around dishwasher connections and washing machine supply valves. How to report. Active leaks must be reported as defects, not maintenance items. Active leaking was observed at the drain trap under the kitchen sink. Repair by a licensed plumber is recommended. Don't soften active defects with language like minor drip. Module 5, client communication. What you say and what you don't say after the inspection can just be as consequential as what's in the report. This module addresses the communication skills that protect both the inspector and the client.
One thing to add to that, Jim, too, and it's
Anytime
me.
you guys want to add, just break in.
Oh, no matter if I finish the outside, I always say to the client, "Do you have any questions?" And sometimes they'll have a question. Sometimes they say, "No, thank you," and then we proceed inside. And if I finish the basement, I finish this. Do you have any questions? And it only takes, and they do, and sometimes they don't. But I just want to make sure if there's anything that they don't understand, at least I can explain it. And I find that helps. At least it's helped me over the years.
Agreed. Managing. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, we talked a little bit earlier about clients' expectations, right? We're going to get a little deeper into it now, but they're
Yes.
coming at this from probably a point of view that we're not, and even the realtors need to have their expectations reined in, especially if they've never worked with you before. So it's just a whole myriad of expectations going on there, and we have to win because we're the ones writing a report and finding the problem. So we have to manage all that.
So most complaints against home inspectors originate not from the missed defect, but from a gap between what the client expected and what the standards require. Set expectations clearly, early, and in writing. At schedule, send a pre-inspection agreement and a brief summary of what home inspection does and does not do. This is your first opportunity to align expectations. At arrival, briefly explain the inspection process to the client. Introduce the scope and how long it will take and what you need to report. Note any obvious limitations before you begin. During the inspection, walk the client through significant findings in real time. Educate, don't alarm. Distinguish between safety concerns, defects, and maintenance items verbally. After the report is delivered, offer to answer questions about the report. Never modify your findings based on pressure from agents or sellers. Refer complex questions to the appropriate specialist. So, as Stan and Scott said, yeah, 100%. I tell you what I do is all my paperwork is digitally sent prior to the inspection. I get to the house early. I do the outside. My client will arrive and I give them the same spiel every time. We're going to do a home inspection today. I've already completed the outside. We're going to go over all that. I'm going to walk you around the house and show you everything. Then I'm going to do the garage, the kitchen, the main level, the upstairs, the attic. When I go downstairs, I'm going to do the heating system, the electrical panel, the plumbing, and then I'm going to do the basement. I don't want you to worry that when I'm in the basement, that I'm not looking at all the things basement-y, because I'm going to be doing the heating, the electrical, and plumbing first, and then I will cover the basement. And after all that, we're going to go back to the kitchen or living room, and we're going to have a nice talk, and we're going to review everything. So now I've told them what I'm going to do. And when I'm in the kitchen, I don't want to hear about the attic. They're not leading me around the inspection. I'm running the inspection. I've had many clients go, I don't care what's happening in the kitchen. We're headed to the attic. I said, good luck. I'll be up there when I'm done with the first or second floor. Well, I want you to come here now. And I say, no, I'm not. I do things the way I do them. That's how I work. So I'm thorough and I don't miss anything. And usually what the agents will do, I'll just look at the agent and the agent will sort of corral them in. But that expectation is really huge. Do you inspect sheds? Do you not inspect sheds? That kind of stuff. I let them know ahead. You've got external, I walked around your house, you have external generation. We do not turn that on. We do not run that. I'll go over it with you. It will be in the report that I did not inspect it. Oh, okay. Explaining limitations to the clients. What you say when you can't access something. I wasn't able to inspect the electrical panel today because it was blocked by storage. I've noted this in the report and recommend that a licensed electrician evaluate the panel before closing. That way you have a professional look at what I couldn't see. Why this works. It's honest and transparent. The client isn't surprised by the limitation, provides a clear path forward. The client knows what action to take. Protects the inspector. Verbal communication aligns with the written documentation, builds trust. Client appreciates candor over confidence. Never say it's probably fine about something you couldn't inspect. This verbal reassurance directly contradicts your written limitation and creates liability. So I had an inspection in Middletown a couple months ago, and I had an intern with me, and there were window problems. There was a fogging window, and all the windows at the back of the house were screwed shut. The client did not follow me around the inspection. I had pictures of the fogging window. I had narratives and pictures of all the screwed shut windows. And the client texted the agent, I'm unhappy with the closing. I'm unhappy with this house. I'm unhappy with the inspector. He missed all the windows. So the agent forwarded the text to me. I can't remember a house 3 days ago, so I looked up the report. Everything's in there with the pictures. But at the beginning of the report, what I put in there was that the client was present at the inspection, but did not follow me around the inspection. The client was not there to hear all my comments and was only there at the end for the wrap up. She just went along her merry way. So
was she talking to the agent, Jim? What was she doing?
She was just bitching to the agent and complaining. And he looked up the report and said, I'm looking at a picture of a fogging window and I'm reading Jim's comment, and it says all the windows to the back of the house were not functional because they were screwed shut.
So are you saying
she didn't read the report?
She didn't follow you initially in that inspection? She
went right to the agent.
And see, I'm glad you bring that up, because sometimes the agents will take the client to, talk to them and distract them. And if it's a husband and wife thing, I say, one of you guys have to stay with me. I say, this is your inspection, stay with me, because I'm going to educate you as I'm going to inspect. And if I find stuff when I point it out to you now, then it's in my report. You'll kind of have an idea. That's why I get people all the time say, well, I don't have to be there, right? And I said, no, absolutely not. I want you to be there. So if you can't be here on this day or time, let's see if we come up with a day or time that you can make it, because just for that reason,
Yeah.
And sometimes, it's unavoidable. They're out of state or whatever, but then I'll take my time and go over everything. You have any questions? It's a little more of a pain when they're not there, but I make sure that, I do the right thing.
Viewing code. If you're viewing this as a pre-recorded event, your viewing code is SP78270. SP78270. What should never be said? These phrases generate complaints, so let's eliminate them. It's probably fine. Verbal reassurance about an uninspected or uncertain condition directly contradicts your written documentation. Never offer this comfort. That should cost about whatever to fix, $50 to fix. Cost estimating is outside the scope of the home inspection and opens you up to liability if repair costs exceed your verbal estimate. I would still buy this house. You are not the buyer as a home inspector. This statement creates an implied guarantee and is outside your professional role entirely. The house is in great shape. A sweeping positive statement contradicts the nature of the inspection findings and sets an expectation that may not align with the written report. So when I do my wrap up, people are constantly requiring me or asking me, how much is this? How much is that? I will sort of give them an estimate verbally at the inspection, but never, ever at the report, in the report. I'll never write it in the report. I always get the question, would you buy this house? And yeah. Scott gets that all the time too. I've come up with, I think is a funny way, and I always say no. And they go, why? And I say, because it bothered my wife because we've been living in our house for 30 years together. So, they go, oh, ha, ha, ha. And then usually they get the point that I'm not going to answer that question. If they press me, what I say to them is, it's not up to me to determine whether you should buy this house or not. It's my job to put you in the best position informationally to whether you should buy this house and what you have to feel comfortable with. And some people won't stop from there. They're like, I hired you to tell me if this is a good house or not. And that's, you have to make your decisions at that point on how you're going to handle it and what the situation is. But I still at that point will go again. At this point, you probably should speak to your agent because they've worked with you for a long time. They know your whole situation. I only know you for the last 2 hours at this inspection. And my job is just the house. So, they have more of a complete background for you. And Scott brought up something about agents. And I can tell you what I'm finding is the newer agents, because of whether it's COVID, they don't go into the offices, all these new online real estate companies, they are not trained very well anymore. I just did an inspection today on a multifamily in Middletown, and the roof was a 3-tap shingle, probably about 30, 35 years old, been patched several times. The roof had to go. There was no question about it. I even put in my report that the roof's past its expected life cycle. I recommended replacement, which I very rarely will do. Then the agent looked at me. He goes, "The buyer, the seller says this roof's only 6 years old." I just started laughing. She says, "Well, that's what they put in the disclosure." So I took them outside. I showed them new roofs that were in the neighborhood, and I said, "Look at your roof. The only new section on your roof is the 2 feet around the chimney that had deteriorated so bad with leaking that they had to put some shingles up there. So maybe that 3-foot section's new, but on your 3,100 square foot multifamily, the rest of the roof's got to go." So, and again, to Scott's point, there was no client there.
Yeah, most people aren't using 3 tabs either. I mean, when I pull up, I see a 3-tab. Chances are it's an older roof.
Right, it's old. The thing looked old. Handling agents, sellers, and contractors, real estate agents. Agents work for the buyers or sellers, not for you. Do not soften findings under pressure from agents who suggest a finding. Will kill the deal. Your obligations is to the client and standards, not the transactions. Sellers may dispute findings or offer explanations during the inspection. Acknowledge their input professionally, but don't modify your observations based on sellers' representations. Report on what you observe. Contractors at the inspection. If contractors are present, their opinions do not override your findings. You are conducting an independent professional inspection. Do not let contractors' verbal assessment be used to press you into changing your report.
To that,
go ahead, Scott.
To that point is if somebody, family member, father, Uncle Joe, contractor, I will say any opinions other than my own, make sure they put it in writing. And that usually shuts them right down because a lot of times, this ain't the code, that ain't the code. We're not doing a code. They're trying to be that uncle that's in there that he might be a home improvement contractor and he's going to try to say this or that. But I usually shut that down quick. And at the same time, if you're doing a good job, a lot of times they're fine. They don't give you a hard time. They say, all right, I'm Absolutely. Good. I don't need to be here anymore.
I find one of the most uncomfortable things, and we only have 30 minutes left, so we'll keep moving, but going back and picking up radon, if it's long enough and they've communicated with the seller, yes. that could be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I just say I'm here to pick up the radon. I don't want to get in a battle with them. And my van says it too. So I just go, no, I'm just here to pick up the radon. Because they're like, are you the inspector? I said, oh, no, I'm just here.
I tell him I was the other guy.
Yeah. That's like, oh, no, I just pick up the radon. I'm not the inspector.
Don't send a report to them until I pick up the radon. But it is true.
I also tell my clients that the contractors, they'll throw the home inspector under the bus first thing.
Oh, yeah.
Get it right. Listen, just because you're I'm not going to knock anybody, but just because you're a professional in that field, that doesn't mean you don't make mistakes.
Right.
And I'll use they make a mistake and I'll tell them, listen, if you're okay with it, you're the one with the license, no problem. Just put it in writing for my clients that everything's okay. Then you get the, oh, well, it's not right.
They start to stutter.
Module 6, case studies. real inspection scenarios. No right or wrong answers until we work through them together. These are situations that define the difference between a good inspector and a great one. So case study 1, the roof you couldn't walk. Scenario, you arrived at a 2-story colonial with a 612 pitch asphalt roof. The shingles appeared worn from the ground. You access the ladder at the eave, but determine the roof is unsafe to walk on during the pitch and apparent soft spots near the edge. Should this roof have been walked? No. What does the New Jersey standard require in this situation? You do not have to walk the roof, but you have to document why you didn't walk the roof. How should the limitation be documented in the report? I did not walk the roof because there's a soft spot and due to the pitch. And what recommendations should be included? You can recommend, because you didn't walk it, you could have a licensed roofer with the specialized equipment to go up there and evaluate the roof. That's what should be done. Defensible documentation. The roof surface was inspected by observation and accessible sections at the eave line and from the ground level using binoculars. Walking of the roof surface was determined to be unsafe at the time of the inspection due to roof pitch and evidence of surface deterioration near the ridge. Granular loss, curling shingles, and worn surface were observed in accessible sections. Evaluation by a qualified roofing contractor, including walking the full surface, is recommended prior to closing. This works because it states what was inspected and how, and explains the limitation with a specific reason. Reports observable conditions, closes with a clear, actionable recommendation. What it avoids, it does not speculate about leakage, it does not estimate remaining life in years, it does not imply the inspector failed to do their job. One of the things I've added in my report when there's problems with the roof is I also put in the report. At that time, the roofer should go into the attic if possible, evaluate the roof structure, its framing, the decking, ventilation, everything having to do with the roof. Because I just don't want them saying, okay, you need new shingles, they pull off the roof, and then now they see rot on decking that I couldn't see. Because maybe the attic was encapsulated or the rot was only on one side, hasn't come through the plywood yet or the OSB. So I've upgraded that report probably about 6 months ago, where it's not only evaluation of the roof, but evaluation of the roof structure as well. Probably overkill. But case study 2, electrical panel blocked by storage. Here's the scenario. The electrical panel in the garage is completely blocked by shelving units filled with the seller's belongings. You can't open the panel door or observe the interior. The exterior of the panel shows no visible labeling issues. Your report must address that the panel was not accessible, what condition prevented access, what could be observed from the exterior, a specific recommendation for follow-up. So a sample narrative would be, the main electrical panel was not accessible at the time of the inspection due to storage items blocking the enclosure. The panel exterior was observed, no labeling, corrosion, or damage was visible. The interior of the panel, including wiring, breaking connection, could not be evaluated. Access and full evaluation by a licensed electrician is recommended prior to closing. Photograph the obstruction before leaving the property. Without a photo, the documentation is significantly weaker. The other thing that you got to look out for is paint. So you'll go into an apartment and the owner, the renter, whoever will have painted that panel with an inch of its life. I will look at the agent, look at the client, and say, listen, I have a knife with me. I can break the paint, but I'll need permission from somebody. Other than that, if I'm going to break the paint and cause that chipping and all that, and and it's not sort of, if it's freshly painted or something like that, I take a picture of that panel and it's not inspected, and I put that sample narrative in. If I have permission, if somebody's there and says, listen, you got to get in, use your X-Acto knife, break the paint, I'm okay with it, then I do it. But case study 3, HVAC systems over 30 years old. The scenario, the gas forced air furnace is over 30 years old, confirmed by the manufacturer date code on the date plate. The system operates. There are no unusual noises, odors, or visible heat exchange or cracks. The filter is dirty, but recently replaced. Should you recommend replacement? At 30 plus years, the unit has far exceeded its 10 to 20 or 15 to 20 year typical life cycle. Even if currently operational, replacement is clearly warranted on the basis of age alone. Include a budget recommendation. I don't necessarily agree with that, but I do agree with the budget recommendation. Should you recommend evaluation? Absolutely. In addition to the age-based replacement recommendation, should Destin HVAC contracts access the heat exchanger in overall condition? A cracked heat exchanger on an older unit is a serious safety concern. Again, the other guys will tell you this. A lot of times you can't see the heat exchanger. In fact, most of the times you can't. Sample narrative. The gas furnace operated at the time of the inspection. The unit approximate age exceeds 30 years, well beyond its typical life cycle of 15 to 20 years. Budgeting for replacement is recommended. Evaluation by a licensed HVAC contractor, including inspection of the heat exchanger for cracks or deterioration, is advised prior to occupancy. Closing discussion. Top mistakes New Jersey home inspectors made. These are patterns that appear repeatedly in complaints, arbitration proceedings, and licensing board actions against New Jersey home inspectors. Walking roofs that shouldn't be walked. Inspectors who access unsafe roofs expose them to personal injury and liability. Standards allow inspection from a safe, accessible positions, including ladder and ground level observation. Guessing ages without documentation. Over-reporting code violations. Home inspectors in New Jersey are not code enforcement officers. Citing specific code sections or declaring conditions code violations overstates your authority or creates liability. Under-reporting moisture, staining, and fluorescence, and odors consistent with moisture are reportable observations. Even if conditions are dry at the time of the inspection, document the evidence, not just the current state. Missing GFCI testing. We've covered this. GFCI testing is required as part of the New Jersey standards. Skipping this because of missing tester or because the location looks new is an omission that generates complaints regularly. Short, funny story. I'm training a new intern. I send him out to do a bathroom. I come back to review his work. I'm like, did you trip the breaker? He goes, no. I'm like, why? He goes, well, I use my tester, but it doesn't have a button to test it. So I said, why would you buy a tester without a test button? So I had to give him one, but it's a crazy world. Not documenting limitations. Every limitation encountered during the inspection must appear written in the report with a reason for the limitation and a recommendation for follow-up. Undocumented limitations become disputed omissions. Weak narratives. We've gone over this. Vague language like roof needs attention, or as Scott said, acceptable. Not good. Using vague recommendations, monitor and maintain as needed, are often used to soften defects that deserve stronger action to call. Reserve vague recommendations for genuinely minor maintenance items, not safety concerns or active defects. Or missing photographs. A narrative without a photograph is weaker than a narrative with one. Photograph every defect, every limitation, every single observation. Photos are your most important evidence for a complaint. Agreed. Forgetting accessible attic areas. Accessible attic spaces are required to be entered and inspected per New Jersey state standards. Inspectors who know attic inspected from hatch only when the entry was possible face legitimate complaints. If you can safely access an attic, then enter it. The photo documentation standard. Photographic documentation is the single most powerful tool an inspector has, both for the client education and professional protection. In any post-inspection dispute, a clear photograph of the condition as it existed at the time of the inspection is always decisive. Again, that fogging window, that thing took up a quarter of the page because I forgot to shrink it. And, it just slapped her in the face when she opened up the report. Every defect, photograph every reportable condition. Close-up shots showing the specific defects are more useful than wide shots of general areas. Every limitation, photograph every condition that prevented full inspection. Stored items, locked doors, snow cover, unsafe access. Photos validate your limitations. And people love the photos. Serial numbers and data plates. Photograph HVAC data plates, water heater labels, and electrical panel schedules. These photos support your age and condition assessment and report. When I take a picture of a refrigerator now, I try to get the data plate. The oven, I try to get the data plate. Microwaves, condensers outside, obviously, the water heater, the heating system, any kind of data plate I can get, and a full picture all the way around the unit always helps. And if I can have systems running, and I'll get that. And my software also allows videos, so that's something that also we can do. Field photographs, the most engaging part of the CE. Reviewing real inspection photographs and discussing how each condition should be reported is consistently rated as the most valuable part of continuing education by practicing inspectors. The goal is not just to recognize, it's developing the judgment to report correctly. I'm just going to look at this for a second. Incorporating 40 to 60 field photographs from your own inspections with discussion questions. So this is something like, go over your own reports and look at these, look at your photographs, and that will help you sort of build education. The 4-part narrative framework: observation, document the physical evidence observed; implication, explain what the finding means and why it matters to the client; limitation or recommendation, advise clear, actionable next steps for the client; and limitation, know what could not be confirmed. Every defensible inspection narrative follows this 4-part structure. Observation grounds the finding in physical evidence. Implication explains why the finding matters to the client. Limitation protects the inspector from overreach. Recommendation gives the client a clear path forward. Mastering this framework is the single highest impact upgrade a New Jersey inspector can make on the report. I can tell you the last 6 months, I've been going over all my comments and going to this 4-part narrative, and it has cut my phone calls. I say this every webinar. It's cut my phone calls completely away from agents, especially because of the implication. These newer agents don't understand why CSST needs to be grounded or bonded. Why, they just don't understand a lot of things. And the implication of why a double tap is bad helps them. It can cause a fire or cause certain other issues that's in the narrative. Whoops. Liability reduction framework: document with photographs, recommend further evaluation, write objective factual narratives, no verbal guarantees or cost estimates, align verbal communication with written report. So it's very important. Key takeaways. So we've gone over that we want to document every limitation. We want to write factual, non-speculative narratives. We want to know the high liability defects. We had a continuing education in Connecticut. I've had mine for quite a long time and been through a number of law seminars. And it's, in Connecticut, we're not required to have errors and omissions insurance. And we've had an attorney tell us, if you're getting the roof, the chimney, the foundation, the water heater, the heating system, the electrical panel, the attic space, what are you missing after that? What is the big thing that you're going to miss? So this is what we mean in the webinar by know the high liability defects: unsafe decks, electrical deficiencies. Make sure you go over your roof, the heat, the water heater, the foundation. If you miss a broken window, it's not the end of the world. Okay, it's not going to bankrupt you. But if you miss a crumbling foundation, that can be $175,000 headache. This is great. These next slides are really good on how to handle issues. When an unhappy client calls, your goal is to listen carefully, document the concern, investigate objectively, and avoid statements that could create unnecessary liability. Recommended complaint handling process: 1, remain calm and let the client speak. Do not become defensive or dispute the report during the initial call. Allow the client to fully describe the condition they observed, its location on the property, when it was found, who evaluated it, what damage or repairs they are claiming, what outcome they expect from you. A useful response is, I'm sorry you're dealing with this. I want to fully understand the situation and review the inspection information carefully. Please walk me through what was discovered and when. Expressing concern is not the same as admitting responsibility. So this is the very first response is very, very important. And again, you got to stay calm. You have not had time to look up the report. You have not had time to go back and re-inspect, which is in Connecticut is in a right that we have in our contracts. So that's the first step. Do not admit fault or promise payment. Avoid statements such as, I must have missed that. This is my fault. I'll cover that repair. Send me the bill. I'll refund your inspection fee. Your insurance policy may prohibit admitted liability, assuming obligations, or making payments to a claimant without your carrier's prior consent. Instead, you want to say, I need to review the report, photographs, inspection agreement, and all available information before drawing any conclusions. Create a written record immediately. After the call, document the following: the date and time of the call, all parties who participated, the client's complaint in their exact words, when and how the condition was allegedly discovered, any contractor opinions or repair estimates referenced, what the client requested, what you said in response, whether an act of safety or property damage concern exists. Preserve all voicemails, texts, emails, photographs, contract reports, invoices, estimates. Do not delete, alter, or overwrite your original inspection photographs, field notes, signed agreements, or written reports. So, obviously I'm not perfect. I've been doing this a little over 16 years. I've had 1 or 2 calls, and I've gotten very good. Plus, my sister's an attorney, which helps. When you get that, so we've had plenty of continuing education, and there's sort of certain people who will call you and won't call you. And if someone writes you a letter, they don't like to confrontation. Okay. So you take the letter, hopefully it comes certified so that they know that you've gotten it. If it doesn't come certified, I sort of just leave it in my drawer until someone contacts me. I don't even know if they know I got the letter. If someone sends you an email, that someone is same thing. They don't want that direct confrontation. But if someone calls you, someone's willing to get into it with you. So know who you're speaking to. But again, all this stuff needs to be documented. Immediately, what I do is I create a folder in my Google Drive and I label that the address. And anything that happens, I dump it into that Google Drive. I'll put the report in there, all my inspection agreements that they signed in there. Everything goes in there. So I'm prepared. Ask the client to submit the concern in writing. Request a written description of the complaint, clear photographs and video documentation, any contract reports or assessment, repair estimates, the closing date and the date the condition was observed, details about any work performed on the property since inspection, whether the condition has already been repaired or removed. You might say, please email me a written description of your concern along with photographs, any contractor documentation. Once I receive your submission, I'll review the inspection records and respond. Ask the client to leave the disputed condition undisturbed until it can be properly documented, unless immediate action is required to prevent injury or further damage. I know in my inspection reports, I have the right to come back and re-inspect. If you do not let me come back and re-inspect, you're in violation of my agreement, which if it ends up going to court is just a little bit of salt and pepper on my case. Because how do you know even know there was a problem? I mean, I had a broken window. Well, I already sent it and the guy came out and put a new window in. I need $400. Well, I don't know that it was broken. It wasn't broken at the time of the inspection. So that you have the right to come back and re-inspect should be in all your contracts. Review your complete inspection file. So you want to review the signed pre-inspection agreement, the inspection report, all your photographs and videos, field notes. Reread your standard of practice. This is huge. Report the scope and limitations, whether the occupancy conditions on the weather and occupancy conditions on the date of inspection, areas that were inaccessible or unobstructed, recommend for further evaluation, whether the claim condition was visible or accessible on the date of the inspection. For kinetic inspectors, the standard of practice generally limits the inspection to readily accessible systems and components. Accordingly, whether a condition was visible or accessible on the inspection date is often central to evaluating a complaint. Same thing in New Jersey. We have about 10 minutes left and a couple more slides to go. But on this sort of section here, a perfect example was what I went through about 8 years ago. I did an inspection for a client. She bought an old house. 5 years later, she goes to sell the house, calls me and says, I'm buying a bigger house. I love the inspection that you did. I want you to do the inspection on my next house. What happens? The day before I'm inspecting her house, she calls me up hysterical crying. The inspector that inspected her house said that the main carrying beam in the house, when the house was from, I think, like 1850, had termite damage and some powder post beetle damage. Okay. I looked up the report, and Basement Systems of Connecticut went in there and completely encapsulated everything in the plastic. So you could not, it was an operating room. You couldn't see anything. The floor was plastic, the walls were plastic, the floor joists, all plastic. So my report read, I entered the area carefully, I snapped 3 or 4 pictures, and I said I couldn't inspect any of the framing or anything. Well, the next inspector who came in disturbed that insulation, ripped it out, and found, oh my God, powder post beetle damage on a 300-year-old house. So I was very calm with her. I said, I understand that you're crying, so we're going to wait till you stop. And you tell me what the next step is. And she says, well, I got 3 estimates. And actually, I had 4 people come in and look at it. And I said, well, why don't we start with number 1? What did that guy say? He said what you said. The inspector should have never ripped the insulation. That powder post beetle damage has been there since the house was built. There's nothing wrong. The second guy said, I could put in a new beam. It's going to be about $7,000. The next guy said he wants to lift the whole house up, and it's $35,000 to put the beam. And that's the one I want to go with. So I just started, I was like, okay. So we went from there's no problem to you want $35,000. I said, well, I can tell you first, you never signed your inspection agreement. So in Connecticut, it's 3 years. It's considered a verbal contract, just to inform you that you're beyond any kind of scope of damage. And she said, well, I'm going to call the Department of Consumer Protection. I said, that's exactly who I want you to call. I think you should file a complaint with them. And she was like shocked by that. Then she filed a complaint with them. I had all my agreements. I had everything ready because I went directly home and started my file. And in Connecticut, you have to respond within 10 days. I submitted everything to them, case dropped, because I had listed everything and documented everything. So needless to say, I did not get her second inspection. She canceled that one. But with handling it in a calm way, and she was crying and upset on the phone, I just let her cry it out. She was like 10 minutes of sobbing. And I said, let's go back to the first 2 guys. The guy said there was no problem. Why was that? He said, well, structurally it's fine. There's no movement in the flooring, and it's very common for powder post beetle damage to happen on an old house. Probably was there when they built the house. I said, yeah. So why are we going with that and not the 35,000? You know, I'd say I have a feeling you're looking for some money. All right, notify your E&O insurance provider promptly. Contact your carrier or insurance broker before offering money, performing a complimentary reinspection, drafting a formal liability response, or negotiating a settlement. Report the matter as a potential claim or request for pre-claims assistance. Even when the client has not yet demanded payment, many home inspector insurance programs offer guidance on responding to complaints before they escalate to formal claims. Always follow the notice requirements specified in your particular policy. Arrange a site visit only after obtaining guidance. A properly conducted return visit can help establish critical facts about alleged condition. Whether the condition was present at the time of the original inspection, whether it is concealed or inaccessible during the inspection, as in my case, whether conditions changed after the inspection was completed, whether subsequent reservations exposed something previously hidden, whether the contractor's description of the defect is accurate. Do not perform destructive testing under any circumstances. Photograph everything thoroughly, take detailed notes, and ensure the client of their representative is present during the visit. Do not debate responsibility on site. If pressed, respond with a clear professional statement. I'm here to document and understand the condition. I will review everything afterward and respond in writing. Responding in writing. Your written response should be clearly addressed. The concern you investigated, what the inspection report documented, relevant limitations or recommendations, what you observed during the return visit, whether the condition was visible and accessible at the time of the original inspection, the next appropriate step. Keep the response objective and factual. Do not speculate about when the when the defect developed unless qualified evidence supports that conclusion. Resolve the matter carefully. Explain that the condition was reported, explaining that the area was inaccessible or concealed, referring the matter to your insurance carrier, offering a customer service accommodation with carrier approval, reimbursing the inspection fee when appropriate, negotiating a settlement through a carrier or attorney. Any refund or settlement should originally or ordinarily include a properly drafted relief of claims. Do not create your own release without legal or insurance guidance. Insurers commonly assist with releases when resolving pre-claims or claims with a link labeled. Initial call, what to do before hanging up. Before ending a call, make sure you listen without arguing, expressing concern without admitting fault, gathering the fact-based complaint, request for the photographs and supporting documentation, committed only to reviewing the matter and following up, documenting the conversation in your records, notifying your insurance provider. Close the call with a statement like this. Thank you for bringing this to my attention. Please send me a written description, photographs, and any contract or documents. I will review those materials alongside with my inspection agreement, report, photographs, and notes. I am not in a position to determine responsibility during this call, but I will follow up once my review is complete. That's it. We made it. So let me end this so I can see you guys. So what do we think? We've got a couple more minutes left to just wrap up. Any questions, concerns, issues?
Excuse me. One thing is that these insurance companies now, they rather settle a dispute. You get to lose your deductible, even if they'd rather not spend tens, $20,000 in court. They'll write a check, and then even if you're right, doesn't matter. They don't care right or wrong. They're looking at the dollar that they got to spend.
And you guys have to carry $500,000 of liability?
Yeah.
What does that cost you a year, roughly? If you don't mind me asking.
Mine's roughly $1,800.
That's not bad.
No, it's not bad.
And what happens if you have a claim or two? Eventually they'll drop you, and then it's hard to get insurance because there's obviously only so many out there. So that could
I don't think they'll drop you if they agree that they're the ones that don't want to fight it, and you were right. Which had happened to me. I had a basement that was completely finished, and I had sleepers on the floor. They were running a beauty salon down there, and there was a trickle of water going to the sump pump. So there was nothing I could see. I wrote it up that there's water underneath the floating floor. It could be from the foundation, could be from, I don't know what it's from. So I wrote the whole thing up, and the guy ended up, he didn't even hire a lawyer. He went and did it all through the court system. And the attorney settled. They wanted $75. They settled for $45. And I lost my $2,500 deductible.
$4,500.
$2,500. And I didn't do anything wrong. I did everything right.
Yeah. I can tell you years ago, I had a client call me about a toilet, and I put that the toilet was loose and not set properly, but it did flush. So plumber goes out there to reset the toilet. They lift it up, and they find a bunch of rot underneath the, on the floor decking. There was no loose tiles or anything like that, but it was all rotted around the plastic ring. So he calls me up. He goes, "How come you didn't see that?" And I said, "Well, first, how am I supposed to see underneath the toilet? And secondly, did you read the report?" "No." I said, "The report says that the toilet was loose. Possible implications are rotted subfloor, blah, 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 loose or cracked tiles that were not seen at the time underneath the toilet. And, further investigation by a licensed plumber is recommended. You didn't read it."
Yeah.
And he got ugly. And I just was like, I'll go to court with that. I mean, it says right in the report that it was loose. And here are the things that I can't see that possibly happened. But the court system's crazy. And like Scott said, the insurance, they'll just want to settle. I mean, as Angela said, they just want to settle just to be done with it.
Yeah. They don't care. They don't care you losing your deposit.
No.
Well, that's the same thing with anything. Sometimes it's, they'll pay out just let it go away. They rather a small loss than have
to. It doesn't matter if you're right or wrong.
Yeah. And that sucks too, because anybody can sue.
Well,
Anybody could say, I'm going to sue you. And, whether you win or not, it's still a pain in the ass. It's tough.
I'm going to stop the recording right now. Give me 1 second and then we can continue.